On this episode, we are headed into the Panamint Mountains to explore a canyon made famous by a group of Death Valley 49ers known as the Jayhawkers. On their quest for gold, being near starvation, the Jayhawkers slaughtered their oxen, burned their wagons, and entered this secluded canyon where they discovered a life-saving spring and a route westward. On the surrounding rocks covered in native petroglyphs, some inscribed their name to remind us that they were once here. So come along with us on this adventure as we learn about the legendary history of Jayhawker Canyon. So in the 1840s, flocks of pioneers traveled westward through the mountains of California in search of gold. And one of those parties of pioneers was named the Manly Jayhawker Party. And the story goes that they got stuck in Death Valley, had no more water, and the two groups split. The Manly group went one way and the Jayhawkers went another. We are currently on the Jayhawkers Trail. They traveled through the Panamint Mountains here, hoping to find signs of water, and they came upon a spring. So today we are headed to that same spring. And apparently there are some petroglyphs, not only made by the native groups who lived here hundreds of years ago, but also by that Jayhawker party who left inscriptions of their own presence on the way over the Panamint Mountains into the Panamint Valley. The group of pioneers, 107 wagons in all, were led by Captain Jefferson Hunt from a supply point in Salt Lake City. They were seeking the mythical Walker Cutoff, a route that would save them 500 miles to the gold fields. After a disagreement about how best to reach the coast, the group left the old Spanish trail and split into two, the Bennett Arcane party going one way and the Jayhawker party another. Ironically, both parties ended up in Death Valley, confronted by the towering Panamint Range. I can only imagine what it would have been like for the Jayhawkers to be traveling up over this range, having absolutely no idea where they were headed. At that point in their story, they were, let's just say, absolutely desperate. Check this out. Already deep up here in the mountains. There are a series of springs that emanate from inside the mouth of this canyon here. We are looking for any kind of sign of a spring, whether it be grasses or maybe small trees or something like that, but something that indicates that there is life. I do think maybe right up there. That is definitely a spring emanating out of the mountain right there. You can see the reeds. We'll know for sure in a second. I think I see some writing on the rock right up in front of us. JMGR. Yeah, we've made it to the site. You can barely see the inscriptions here. They're so old. Cool. Wow, check this out. These look like water symbols flowing down the mountain. They're super, super old. They are really, really faded. You can see there's what looks like maybe a water symbol there. Wow. Oh, look at this. Despite efforts, I could not discern the origin of these initials. Are they those of Jim Martin, one of the original Jayhawkers, or a subsequent traveler seeking gold? So you have modern petroglyphs here. I don't see what that says. L-I-E-R? Liar? This style of petroglyphs is highly unusual for this region of California. The bottom one seems to depict a deer, and the top one possibly a heron or some other anthropomorph. So but check this one out. Over here, this entire rock
is covered.
Perhaps Death Valley's greatest legend states that one of the 49ers from the Jayhawker party, Jim Martin, had broken his gun sight while crossing the pass. He later picked up a rock which was said to be almost pure silver, from which a new gun sight was then made. Word spread of this high-grade ore, and thus began the legend of the Lost Gunsight Lode. Over the years, numerous prospectors returned in search of the Lost Gunsight Mine, some of whom included the 15-man Darwin French prospecting party of 1850. J. Hitchens, whose name is inscribed here, was amongst that group. Having never found the mine, he returned 10 years later, but still found nothing.
Really cool. Really excited to be here and to see this historical artifact.
As the Jayhawkers crossed the Panamints, they stopped at this spring, and at least one of them, William B. Rood, carved his name into this giant basaltic boulder. Perhaps it was a way to mark his existence if death should overtake them. With its many petroglyphs, this area has clearly been an important waypoint for native travelers far before the 49ers. Perhaps the most interesting story is that of W. W. McCoy. Major William Wirt McCoy was a veteran of the Mexican-American War and eventually served in the legislatures of 3 states. His greatest claim, however, is that he was responsible for the mining success of Eureka, Nevada, at the time a struggling mining camp turned second largest city in the state. McCoy purchased the inefficient Morris and Company furnace used to reduce ore, made improvements to it, and by the 1870s had created a far more efficient and productive machine. Silver production peaked as a result of his efforts.
So if you look closely enough, you can still find artifacts from the days of the miners. Check out this wood nail that we found. So this would have been handmade. You can even see there's some dimples up here. This thing probably is about 175 years old. And it's just been sitting here on the surface for that long. We're going to put it back where we found it so someone else can enjoy the experience of discovery. We are at the spring, but I don't hear any running water. Maybe it's further up the hill there. Check out this view. And this is what it looks like up canyon. They must have had no idea what to expect. And what a sore disappointment it would have been had the spring been dried up like it seems to be today. Very yummy. Well deserved. Let's see what you're drawing here. Ooh, an American kestrel. Beautiful. I think we saw one of those yesterday in Panamint Valley. Very nice.
A final small bit of lore goes back to a Mr. William Road, probably the same Jayhawker from 1849, as George Miller, an acquaintance of Road, tells it in his search for the Lost Gunsight Mine. After crossing Emigrant Pass, when the Jayhawkers broke into smaller parties, Rhodes and others gathered about $2,000 into a blanket and buried it for safekeeping under a greasewood bush, being too heavy to carry on their backs, and one day hoping to return. Miller states that he went to the spot in 1869 to seek the money, but because of heavy storms, the area had been obliterated and the money nowhere to be found. Very likely, buried deep in the alluvial, the money remains to this day.
So we are approaching the mouth of the canyon and about to head back across the plain, and that was a pretty awesome hike. It was really cool to have a reason to go into this canyon, an otherwise really kind of an anonymous canyon that most people probably would never care to visit, but really a spectacular place to hike through. Amazing rock walls and of course amazing history. We've made it back.
Yes.